Hello everyone, welcome to my session, Mindmap driven testing. My name is Prashant Hegde. I am a passionate tester and an agile enthusiast from India. I enjoy sharing my experiences through blogging and participating in software testing and agile communities around the world. I am a frequent speaker at industry conferences. I love writing, I am an active blogger, and I have authored articles for leading software testing magazines and blogs. I've also helped thousands of ISTQB aspirants to clear their certifications with my free app ISTQB Test Mentor. I currently head the QA team at an organization called MoEngage. MoEngage is a leading customer engagement platform. MoEngage helps businesses to delight their customers and improve their customer engagement. Today I am here to share with you all my experiences, knowledge, and ideas on Mindmaps and how we can use this ultimate cognitive tool to do better testing. Let's get started. Here is what you can expect out of this session. By the end of this session, you will learn what is a mind map and how to draw a mind map using the best practices. We will discuss the challenges that testers face with the traditional approach of test documentation and how we can overcome them by using mind maps as lean test artifacts. Today we will learn to design a lean test plan and lean test cases using mind maps. Mind maps actually blend in really well with exploratory testing. So we will discuss how you can use mind maps to document and structure your exploratory testing. So, what is a mind map? Mind map can be called as a visual thinking tool that helps you to visualize your thought process. A mind map is a tool that captures the thinking that goes inside your head. Mind maps enable you to organize your thoughts, generate new ideas, and also improve your creativity. Using mind maps will make you a better thinker. A mind map is called as a Swiss Army knife for your brain because it's a multi-purpose thinking tool which has been used by millions of people worldwide who want to benefit from this extraordinary technique. In simpler terms, mind map is a diagram that represents complex information in a simplified visual form. Here is an example of a mind map. This mind map talks about building a personal brand. Look how creative this mind map is. This mind map is creative and informative at the same time. At a very high level, you can visualize how you can build a personal brand. Also, you can drill down these branches and also look at the details of how you can build a personal brand. Though mind mapping was popularized by Tony Buzan in 1970s, mind maps have been there since a very long time. The first ever recorded mind map dates back to 3rd century AD. We have seen throughout the history that several geniuses and scientists have used mind maps to brainstorm, share their thoughts, or to take notes, or even to make learning simpler for others. So the question is, what made these great geniuses and scientists use mind maps? To understand that, we need to first know the science behind mind mapping. Researchers have proven that our evolutionary part of the brain, cerebral cortex, is divided into two hemispheres, the left and the right. These two hemispheres are responsible to perform a wide range of intellectual and complex tasks called cortical skills. Unfortunately, most of our traditional learning methods like listening to a lecture, reading a textbook, or taking notes do not actually create meaningful engagement as they do not engage all the cortical skills. Keeping these cortical skills isolated from one another does not really help in brain development. Mind mapping is based on the principle of radiant thinking, which says that our brains do not work in terms of lines and sentences, but in terms of imaginations and associations. Mind mapping encourages the whole brain thinking as it brings together a wide range of cortical skills which other traditional methods fail to do. When you are mind mapping, you actually utilize all these cortical skills. That's what makes it really effective. Mind map utilize all our cortical skills and activate our brain at all levels, making it more engaged unlike any other traditional forms of learning. Now let us learn how to draw a mind map. Start at the center of the page or screen in landscape mode. Starting at the center of the page gives you the flexibility to use the entire page or the entire screen. Remember, every mind map is drawn around a central idea. The central idea is the starting point of your mind map and represents the topic which you are going to explore. Use an image to represent your central idea. Either hand draw it or make it digitally. But taking time to personalize your central idea will actually help you to strengthen your connection with your mind map. The next step is to add branches to your mind map. The main branches which flow from the central image represent the key themes. You can then add child branches which helps you to explore these key themes. Remember, branches need to come naturally when your brain freely draws new association from different concepts. This is basically the representation of associative nature of the brain, wherein you try to associate one idea with another idea or one idea with multiple ideas. Do not use long lines and sentences in your mind map. It will restrict your thinking. Rather, use keywords. The use of keywords will trigger connections in your brain and it will allow you to remember large quantity of information easily. Color stimulates the cortical activity imagination, and color coding the branches will help your brain to create mental shortcuts. Colors are really exciting to our brain, so feel free to use colors throughout the mind map. You may want to highlight a particular portion of your mind map with a different color so that you can distinguish it from the rest of the mind map easily. The branches on your mind map need to be curved or curvilinear in nature, but not straight. Nothing in nature is straight. Curved lines give you a visual rhythm and variety that helps your brain to focus better. So try having curved or curvilinear lines on your mind map. Use images throughout the mind map. An image is worth 1,000 words. If you have 10 images on your mind map, you probably have 10,000 equivalent words on your mind map. An image is processed much more faster than text by our brains. Image helps us to remember and recall large pieces of information easily. So use images throughout the mind map. And once the mind map is ready, the mind map itself acts as a big picture. Remember these best practices when you try to draw a mind map. Here are a list of tools that you can use to draw mind maps on your computers. I will not go in depth about how to use a particular tool. I will leave it up to you. These tools are very easy and user-friendly too, and their interface is really intuitive. You can easily get started using any of these tools. Before we go ahead and learn how to use mind maps in software testing, let us first discuss the challenges that we testers face with the traditional approach of test documentation. Several surveys show us that testers are spending more and more time on test documentation. Testers are spending a lot of time on creating huge documents like test plans and test cases. The problem is, in this agile and DevOps era, testers do not have enough time to test. We work in a highly compressed test execution cycles. When such is the case, we cannot spend too much time on documentation. Because documentation is not testing, but rather a chief distraction in software testing. The traditional test documents are really time intensive. It takes a lot of time to create these documents, and these documents are huge and bulky. The most challenging aspect of these traditional documents are that they are inflexible to changes. In agile, we embrace changes, but these documents stop us from being agile. They do not support changes. Their structure do not support changes, because of which it becomes difficult to maintain them and they go out of date quite quickly. And these documents are very difficult to review, and even the reports that we create are really extensive and it takes time. Let's take an example of test plan. According to IEEE 829, there are 16 different components that needs to be a part of the test plan. Testers spend humongous amount of time to come up with this test plan by following all these 16 steps, and once the test plan is ready, nobody even bothers to read it, right? Nobody has time to read a 100-page document. Remember, a document is only useful when somebody is reading it. Forget about reviewing and maintaining this. Nobody can even read such a huge document, right? So this document actually goes out of date quite quickly and stops adding any value to the project. So my question is, do we really need documents like this? Right? Do they really add value? Now let us discuss an example of coming up with a lean test plan using Mindmaps. Your release name will go as the central idea. There will be two main themes to this mind map, that is in scope and not in scope. Add them as your main branches. All you have to do is to specify what's in scope for the release. Specify what are the features that you will be testing and what are the types of testing that you will be performing on these features. In contrast, on the other side, specify what are the features that you will not be testing and what are the types of testing that you will not be performing. That's it. That summarizes a one-page test plan. Remember, a simple and easily updatable test plan is much more superior than a 100-page test plan that does not add any value. Any newbie tester who has no experience of creating a test plan can easily use this technique to create an effective one-page test plan. If there is any change, all I might have to do is I might have to remove one or two nodes or add one or two nodes. Mind maps are really flexible to changes, and the modern mind mapping softwares make it really easy to accomplish and embrace changes, which is not the case in our traditional documents. If you want to come up with an even more detailed test plan than this, then you can use 5Ws technique along with mind maps. In this mind map, you will have 5 main themes: why, when, where, who, and what. Here is what you need to do. Specify why we are doing this. Why are we coming up with this test plan at the first place? In when section, specify what is the sprint length, release cycle. Specify about the releases, their start date, their end dates. In where section, specify about the different environments wherein testing will take place. In who section, mention all the people who are involved in the project along with their roles and responsibilities. In the what section, brainstorm all possible whats that you can think of and try to answer them, like what are the supported platforms, what is the definition of done, what are the deliverables, what types of testing that will perform. Think of all possible whats and try to answer them. Once you do this, you have a very detailed test plan which at one glance gives you the idea of all the activities that are planned in your testing. Before I go ahead and talk about using mind maps in exploratory testing, I want to quickly touch upon scripted testing versus exploratory testing. Scripted testing is the traditional way of testing, wherein you write test cases in advance. You either refer a requirement document, a PRD, a SRS, or a user story. These documents actually act as basis from which you write test cases in advance. And once the software is ready, you actually execute all these scripts that you have written. On the other hand, exploratory testing is simultaneous learning about the software, designing the tests, and executing the tests while taking feedback from previous tests. So when you're performing exploratory testing, you are not writing test cases in advance. You are simultaneously exploring the app, learning about it, you are designing tests, you are executing tests, you are also taking feedback from your previous tests. Many people confuse exploratory testing with ad hoc testing. Exploratory testing is not ad hoc testing. Ad hoc testing or monkey testing has no structure to it. But exploratory testing requires structured thought process, experience, intuition, and sapience of the tester. One of the problems that people talk about when performing exploratory testing is how do we record exploratory testing as we are not writing test cases? How do we stay on track? Many people complain that they go off track when they are performing exploratory testing. They lose focus. They fail to keep on track. So I feel mind maps can actually help us to document exploratory testing really well and also help us to stay on track and focus on what has to be done. Usually when we perform exploratory testing, we do it in time box sessions, and many people use charters and session notes to actually document their exploratory testing. I personally like using mind maps to actually record my exploratory tests. Let's assume that I want to test an application called Notepad, which is a simple text editor. The app name and icon will go as the central idea, and I will identify the focus areas which I want to work on during my exploratory session. I will add these focus areas as branches on my mind map. I have identified 8 features that I want to work on during this session, and I have added them as branches on my mind map. And these focus areas are new, save as, edit, print, format, view, and open. Once I identify the focus areas, I will start coming up with test ideas. For example, I will think about how I can actually test the save functionality. I will think about ideas like saving from the file menu, using the hotkeys to save, or I will think about testing the confirmation pop-up. Right? I will come up with a variety of test ideas and I will add them as sub-branches to my mind map. If you look at the approach I am taking, I am not using detailed and extensive steps to represent my test ideas. I am using one-liner test cases. My complete focus is on test idea generation and not on test documentation, right? I am not coming up with detailed steps like, click on file menu, click on save button, expected result is the file should be saved, right? I am not going to that detail because as a tester, I know what I am doing. I know I'm smart enough and I do not need detailed steps to execute my own test cases. This also helps us to come out of this scripted mindset and be more exploratory in nature. Since I am performing exploratory testing, I will also execute my tests as and when I generate them. So in the mind map, I have represented the test that passed with the green tick mark and the test that failed with the red cross. Make mind maps a living document. Add what tests passed and add what tests failed immediately after you generate them, right? Because this is a simultaneous activity of generating test cases and also executing them. Once you come up with test ideas for all the focus areas that you had planned, you get a bird's eye view of the entire testing that you have performed. You can clearly see what test cases have passed, what test cases have failed. I can also look at my test coverage. I can see that some of the areas like open, print, and save as have limited test ideas. Probably I need to spend some more time to generate some more ideas to strengthen my testing in those areas. right? So this gives me the complete picture of my test coverage, and also if I am uh, focusing on all the areas in the time box session that I have. Once I come up with all the test ideas and I execute all the tests, I need not have to spend any additional time to come up with a test report. The final version of your mind map can itself act as a test report. You can share the same picture with your stakeholders and developers. It tells them the entire story of testing in one picture. Look at how beautiful this approach is. We used one single mind map to generate tests. We used the same mind map to execute our tests, and we are using the same mind map as our test report. While we do this, our entire focus is on test idea generation and test execution rather than on documentation. That's what makes mind maps effective. And also, since mind map is a cognitive activity, it helps me to trigger more and more ideas, and it helps me to unleash my creativity. Let's assume that I want to come up with more test ideas for the same notepad application. One of the techniques that I use is I think of all possible testing types that can be applied on this application, and I add them as branches to my focus areas on the mind map. As you can see in the picture, I thought of some different testing types and I have added them as branches. By doing this, it actually helps me to come up with more test ideas. I never thought about usability of this feature. I never thought about security of this feature or compatibility of this feature. By having different testing types, it actually unleashes my thinking and helps me to broaden my thought process about what are the different testing types that I can do on the application, and also increase the number of test ideas that are generated. There is no predefined set of rules that you need to follow when you are mind mapping. A couple of years back, I was testing an application called InBlocks, which was an email management application for your iPhone. There was a new feature introduced wherein user could add up to 3 different accounts, and I was asked to test this feature. As you can see in the picture, one thing that I did differently here was I added bugs along with the screenshots directly on the mind map. I also recorded some of my observations and questions on the mind map too. Agile is all about quick and early feedback. I did not want to spend too much time in writing and creating detailed test documents, or spending time in writing detailed bug reports. My intention was to give quick feedback to my developers on the newly developed feature. I shared the same mind map with my developers, and they were actually able to get early feedback, and they fixed the bugs really early in the sprint, making us truly agile. So feel free to come up with your own style of mind mapping according to the context of your project. Here is another example. This mind map was created by me and my team together. Yes, collaborative mind mapping is possible. All the modern mind mapping tools let you to collaboratively work on the same mind map. Collaborative mind mapping can be much more effective than you working alone. So feel free to try collaborating mind mapping with your team. It can give you great results. Let's assume that I want to test the same notepad application, but this time I want to perform regression testing on notepad. During regression testing, we make sure that the unchanged part of the application is not affected because of changes. Our goal during regression testing is to minimize testing and at the same time make sure that all the important areas of the application are covered by our tests. Mind maps can be used along with heuristics. Heuristics are mental shortcuts or a rule of thumb that can guide your testing. And usually heuristics are represented using mnemonics. Making heuristics denoted using mnemonics makes us easy to remember and recall heuristics. Here is a regression testing heuristic by Karen and Johnson. Every word in this heuristic, RC, means something. Recent, core, risk, configuration sensitive, repaired, and chronic. Add every word as branches on your mind map. These words act as your main themes. Let's see how this works. Recent says that the recently developed features or the recently added code should be part of your regression testing. I have identified two features that are newly developed, that is help, time and date. Core says that no matter what new features or changes are added, the core and the main functions still have to be tested during regression testing. I have identified three features which are the core features of Notepad, and I have added them as part of my mind map. So if you see my approach, what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to shortlist some of the features that I want to test, right? I'm not showing you the test ideas part of it, right? The next step is to come up with test ideas for these features, that's for sure. But here the approach is to minimize your testing and prioritize what parts of the application you have to test. That's what this heuristic is guiding me to do. Risky says that some areas of the application may pose more risk, and these parts of the application might be frequently used by customers but not by our testing. So identify some risky features and add them as part of your regression testing. Configuration sensitive. Some parts of the application might depend on environment settings or your operating system specifics. Identify such features, make them part of regression testing. Chronic. Some areas of your application have defect clusters. It's very easy for we testers to find out the defect clusters in our application. Find those functionality that frequently breaks and add them as part of your regression testing. Finally, repaired. Along with testing the new features and the impact, you have to also test for the bugs that have been fixed. So as you can see, by using this heuristic along with the mind map, I am able to come up with a solid strategy to prioritize my tests and identify the areas that I want to test. The next step, as I told you, is to come up with test ideas for these features and go ahead with regression testing. Mind maps are a great way to capture information and ideas. Mind maps are perfect to create book summaries. It's much faster to review a mind map than an entire book. Mind maps actually help me to remember and retain information from books for a very long time. You can mind map by chapters or major concepts. If you want to recall any book that you had read, all you have to do is you have to look at the first level notes from your summary mind map. If you want to get more details, you can drill down each node and find what you're looking for. You can also use mind maps to plan your travel. Here is an example. I planned my trip to Europe using a mind map. This mind map has every detail of my journey, from my flight tickets to the places that I want to visit till the dishes that I want to try. This helped me to have a great trip and I did not miss any attraction. Without this mind map, I feel that I would end up cluelessly wandering in cities without a compass. Modern mind mapping tools actually let you add attachments and links in the mind map. So you will have all the things that you need in one place, and this mind map acts as a blueprint for your journey. We have come to the end of the session. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed the session. Today we learned what are mind maps and why mind maps really work. We learned how to draw mind maps right from scratch using the best practices. We discussed how we can use mind maps in different phases of software testing to come up with lean test documents that not only help you to overcome comprehensive formats of test documentation, but also help you to trigger better test ideas. We also discussed about how we can use mind maps to do better learning, how you can learn better using mind maps. The first thing that I want you to do when you leave here today is to draw your first mind map. Use any of the ideas and techniques we discussed here today and draw your first mind map. You can do it on a piece of paper or using any of the tools. Do share it with me on social media. I would be really curious to look at your first mind maps. Lastly, I would like to thank Contest for giving me this opportunity and this wonderful platform to share my thoughts. With that, I would like to close the session and open for questions. Please connect with me on social media. I am really active on LinkedIn and I would like to connect with you all and also like to discuss and answer if you have any questions. Thank you so much.